Everyone, just going to get out of here. Okay, here we go. Where's the slideshow part? There we go. Okay. So I'm here today to talk about a few things, actually. I'm standing here as an academic and activist combined. My area of expertise is sex work. And I'm also a former sex worker of 15 years in the escort industry. So what I'm going to talk about today is the importance of involving Indigenous populations in all programming, research, development, from the beginning to the end and beyond. So I'm going to speak today about Project Home LA, which is an Office on Women's Health funded empowerment training program for women located in Skid Row here in Los Angeles. And then I'm going to give an overview of another project which involved the service population in India, which was a large sex worker-led, community-led intervention as well. So. But just to start, I'll just speak a little bit. Center for Health Justice, what we do, I basically run all the women's programming. So we work with incarcerated and post-incarcerated men, women, and transgender individuals in the Los Angeles County area. I run 3 different groups in 3 different locked settings. I go to the federal prison, MDCLA, where the white-collar crime happens. I go to Linwood, the women's jail, and I also go to Men's Central Jail, which is the largest jail in the world, and I run a group for the male-to-female transgender population. So I wear a lot of hats, and I do a lot of work with and by women. This program is, as I said, funded by the Office on Women's Health. It's into its 6th and final year. I'm going the wrong way now. And basically, before I start, I just want to talk a little bit about the ratio. The program was developed in San Quentin. Actually, it was developed at University of San Francisco. And it was in response to the increasing numbers of incarcerated men who were being affected with HIV/AIDS. And it's traditionally due to sharing tattoo equipment. There is drug use that goes on inside the facilities. I've actually been to MDCLA where we've had to be turned away because there were 3 overdoses in the last 2 weeks. So it does happen. In fact, often it happens more inside than on the streets. So there's a high risk for this population, and therefore the risk is passed along to the women who are with these men. So a little background, so I'm not going to go through the slides, I'm not going to read them, it's self-explanatory, but I am going to talk about Skid Row. As you all know, it's in downtown Los Angeles. The population as of 2000 it's probably grown, was 17,740 individuals living in that region. And it contains one of the largest stable populations, somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 homeless people in the United States. So it's definitely an area where there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of issues that the women I'm delivering these workshops to encounter on a daily basis. So for the groups, for PHLA, the majority, surprise, surprise, is African American. This is the breakdown of the women who have participated in this program. What it is it's a 2-day empowerment training held right in Skid Row where the women typically live. So I've been running groups out of James Wood Apartments, which is SRO housing, where it's a single room and the women live there. Or I've even heard women say, I prefer to sleep on the street than be in some of these places, which I found really interesting because there is a high degree of theft and violence that takes place. So it's gender specific. What does that mean? That means that as we develop the program, I continually ask the women, is this working for you? What's missing? What do you need? because I don't want to be the expert coming down into Skid Row, parachuting in with my white hair and you know, saying this is what I think you need. I want to hear what you think you need, and then we develop the programs based around that. So it's designed to teach them to become peer educators, but also to deliver it within their own communities. So that was the idea of it. Just a few statistics. The US does have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. I talked a little bit about incarcerated men, and then the women living in Skid Row are exposed to a lot of stress. They're dealing with stress on a daily basis. Extreme poverty, as I said. Some of the women have children who may be incarcerated as well, very common. A lot of the women living in Skid Row that have attended the groups I run are actually older. So a large majority are 40 and above, which falls into my age group. So I found that really interesting, and they've been there for a very long time, and they themselves have also recycled through the criminal justice system. So they're in and out of jail as well, and equally, if not more than their incarcerated partners. So I found that really interesting as well. And again, we treat these women as experts in their own lives, so I always like to come in with inclusion, not tokenism, because I find that happens a lot in Indigenous planning. So, for men serving life sentences, okay, these are some of the qualitative data we got. There are no conjugal visits allowed. So, the women may be waiting for 10 years or longer, or maybe never get to see their partner again, because with Pete Wilson, Gray Davis, all the former governors said, nobody serving a life sentence is ever going to get out unless it's in a pine box. And that was a quote. What's happened is there are a lot of lawsuits, and they are letting a lot of these men out. It's just statistically proven that men serving life sentences that have done a very long time are the least likely to reoffend. Whereas people that are recycling in and out in Men's Central Jail, for example, I can run a group one day, 1 week, and go back the following week and nobody's there because they're out, but then go back the following month and I'll see the same faces again. So that's just an example of what the women are dealing with too, along with, you know, having to be the primary caretaker of the household. If they do have children, that's problematic because they're living in poverty. And the women said the main issues while her partner is inside is the distance. Some partners are not in California. They may be in another state, or they may be up in Corcoran, or they may be at Donovan, which is closer to San Diego. And women don't have the means to travel necessarily these distances. Also, the phone calls from the partner has to be collect. So collect calls are problematic because the woman always has to pay. And that can add up because it's actually an elevated higher price collect call than standard collect calls are. And also, so the communication issues are very problematic for these women. They find that they just don't even communicate sometimes, and they don't know what's going on. So that can be difficult. I did speak with one lifer who actually was reunited with his partner, and I found it interesting that he was down for 32 years. It's a very long time. He was incarcerated from the time he was 17 until 49. And when he went in, there weren't even cell phones. There were no, I mean, I don't even think Betamax was around then, I'm dating myself. But so he said, like, all of a sudden you're out in the world and there are all these things going on and all this activity and all this technology, and it's just overwhelming. So it takes a very long time for someone to readjust, reintegrate back into society after being in the norms and structures of incarcerated settings, which is quite different than in the free world, as he calls it. So what the women talk about, what are the main issues when he does get out, and basically it's the hypervigilance. There's a lot of that goes on, even with the women in Skid Row, very hypervigilant. No time to really think about, gee, I think I'll have a cup of tea and enjoy my day. A lot of it is there's so much going on all the time that you constantly have to be on survival mode, and therefore the women talked about not having any sense of knowing who they really are, because they're so busy trying to to navigate in the world, that to actually sit down and think, what are some of my dreams, what are some of my passions? And I really like to bring that into the programming because I think it's important to talk about those very things. And this program initially was to educate women on HIV, AIDS, and exposure to. And what I found was these women are actually more knowledgeable than a lot of populations I know on HIV, AIDS. They've got that right there. There are vans that go up, do the testing all the time. There are a lot of programs that talk about that, actually. So what the women needed more was gender-responsive emotional support. They wanted to talk about their children who had been apprehended. They wanted to talk about, parenting and feeling like they were failures because they weren't able to raise their children the way they had wanted to. So we actually redeveloped the program continually to meet those needs. Just a few of the quotes. So really powerful stuff, just basically feeling like now I have a voice and I can mobilize my voice and become an activist. And the women have now started a blog of their own about what their encounters living in Skid Row and what some of the day-to-day conflicts are, and also what some of the joys are, because it's not all doom and gloom. I've been to Africa, I've been to Kibera, into the slums there, and people are very resourceful. They're mobilizing. They know what they need and they mobilize in order to get it. So I really like the resilience that comes out with that. So just to compare what I've done here in South, how much time do I have? I want to make sure I'm on point.
It's at 11 minutes right now.
Perfect. Okay. So I wanted to compare the work I've done here with work that was done in India. It's the Sonagachi Kolkata intervention program called SHIP, S-H-I-P, and basically it's another participatory action methodology that brought together the community in Calcutta, in this area. It's Asia's largest red light district. There are several hundred multi-story brothels located there, and approximately 11,000 sex workers work out of these brothels. So what they wanted to do was mobilize and create something similar to what we've done with PHLA in terms of reaching the workers, the brothel managers, the owners, and the clients. So very much reaching all parties involved in the sale of sex, because it's not just monogamous, it's many, many different entities involved, which is actually my dissertation research is around brothel and massage managers and owners across Canada. So if you're interested in that, it's very interesting, looking at the three-way alliances and how they form relationships and power negotiations and that kind of thing. This SHIP was basically a community-led HIV intervention program funded by the World AIDS Foundation. And since it has started, it looked at the role of brothels in actually mobilizing and getting HIV education awareness out there. And the findings, the conclusions from that are that it led to more empowerment, it led to more HIV-related knowledge, it led to better partnerships with each other because people were working together, and also condom use went up. So future directions, I have 1 minute. What we want to do with PHLA is expand it to incarcerated women as well. We heard some of the women say that not only they, but their children are incarcerated. So why can't we have something that talks about our children being locked up as well, which I found really interesting. And we've just submitted a proposal with UCLA, with an MOU with UCLA, in terms of developing an app. The technology is here, and we want to develop an app that will be mobilize people who are on parole, where they have 24/7 support through the touch of the app, instead of having to have your standard, parole officer works from 9 to 5 or whatever. So it would be 24/7, because a lot of times people are released in the wee hours of the morning, 3 a.m., 2 a.m., with a bus ticket and really nowhere to go. So a lot of times these people end up where they came from. So that's it. Thank you.